So today we're standing in the street of Mary Gergis, or the street of Old Cairo, where the largest Christian complex exists. There are more than 10 churches, a synagogue, and a mosque in one street. That's why we call it a religious complex. And here we are, we're looking toward the remaining part of the Babylon fortress. The Babylon fortress is the oldest Roman fortification that was here over the Nile River in a place known as El Fustat. El Fustat is a term given to the area by the Muslims when they came 641, but when the fortress was built in the late 1st century, beginning of the 2nd century AD, it was to secure this area, and it was a very large fortress, had 2 towers. This is the remaining part of the first one. As you see down there, Andy, the original stone, and how deep was the ground level when it was built. And then the other tower is behind you, Andy, over there, where they built this Greek Orthodox Church in the early 20th century, over the remaining part of that tower. Between the 2 towers, there was the entrance gate to the whole fortress. So the fortress was toward the east side. The entrance gate is now, or today, is replaced with the Coptic Museum behind us. So the stories of this fortress are very interesting, because it had Roman legions living in this part of Cairo to secure the area against any possible attack that might come through the sea. When Egypt converted to be under the control of the Romans, Andy, they did not treat Egypt the way the Greeks did. They never ruled from Egypt. They were ruling from Rome and sending representatives here in Egypt, running the country, while keeping around 50,000 soldiers, Roman soldiers, divided into different legions in different areas to keep security, collect tax, and stop any rebel against the Romans. And this is one of their very known holdings in the area. Today, there is a very famous church that is built over the remaining eastern part of the fortress, which is the Hanging Church, the Church of Virgin Mary, Jesus and Joseph, the Holy Family, and its history is very interesting. So now let's go and see the church. About the coming of Christianity and early appearance of Christians in Egypt and how things were in the whole country. Egypt is one of the few countries that has very long Christian history, and they affected the Christian world in so many different ways, even changing some of the beliefs about Jesus and the controversies that took place around the 4th century about the nature of Jesus that led to the diversity and the different sects we have today. But Egypt is known for the visit of the Holy Family, and when Jesus was a baby, when he was born in Jerusalem, he was chased by Romans to Egypt. Mary brought him, and Joseph was with them, and they stopped in 16 different cities. Every city they stopped at, there is a church or a cathedral dedicated to them, named after them. And this whole journey in Egypt is known as the Flight of the Holy Family. So we're speaking about 1st century AD. And then afterwards, early Christians, after Jesus, like his apostles, some of them traveled to Egypt and started to spread Christianity amongst the Egyptians. So starting from the 3rd century, we started to see appearance of Christians in Egypt everywhere. But during this time, Egypt was ruled by the Romans, and the Romans were against the religion, Christianity. So they were hunting, chasing, and persecuting Christians everywhere in Egypt. So the Christians had to leave the cities, leave the main cities, and go in the middle of the desert, isolate themselves, and worship the gods in such an isolated way. We call it asylum. The asylum to the God in the middle of the desert. And then by the end of the 4th century, around 385 AD, Christianity announced to be the main religion of the Roman Empire. And since that time, Christians started to have freedom. Freedom to build churches, freedom to practice, freedom to argue their religion amongst the other religions and beliefs in the country. And here, Andy, we have the entrance to the Hanging Church, that its earlier structure dated to the end of the 4th century AD. One of the earliest churches that ever built in this area. And you know what? It's my theory, or most of Egyptologists believe that they built the church over the tower because this area converted to be a religious place through time, but I believe there is a symbolism behind building the church over the Roman tower, because this specific fortress, the Babylon fortress, it persecuted many Christians all the time.
Right.
So the building the church over it meant triumph of Christianity over paganism. That's the whole meaning. And then the gate you see, the entrance, this is a modern gate. Compared to the time when it was built, we're talking about 130, 140 years old entrance that is built out of stone, as you see, with some preservation of Christian style. You see the crosses, the cross up there, and you see something known as crenellations. You see the crenellations over there?
Yes.
The castles, battlements that adorns the upper parts of the walls. And then below it, the beautiful carvings in the stone known as stalactites. And this is something really common in most of the Islamic architecture in Cairo.
Did I enter the photo?
I think we came, maybe.
دخلت في الصورة؟
We have, looks like a school group here. Very cool.
You film?
Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
for YouTube.
Can I say
YouTube.
Hi? YouTube?
Yes.
Can I say hi?
Yes, you can say hi.
Hi.
From Cairo.
So right here we have the very old map of Egypt that depicts the flight of the Holy Family coming from Jerusalem, entering Egypt through the northeast, moving around the delta, going all the way down to Old Egypt. And Old Egypt, this was the old name of this site. And then they even traveled further south, all the way down, till they went near Luxor, 800 kilometers south of Cairo, and then they went back through the Nile River all the way out. And here we have the modern church built over the earlier walls of the Roman fortress, as we agree. And then the facade, the stone facade behind us is very beautiful. Take a look over there.
Yes.
Very delicate. Every symbol, every part is carved in such a precise way. And by the way, this style of carvings on a stone, it is very common in the Islamic mosques. Having the columns carry arches, that's also something common in the Islamic mosques. Because the Muslims, and there was one of the dynasties known as the Fatimids, they decided to move the center of the Patriarch of Egypt from Alexandria to Cairo, to be in this specific church. And this means that every ceremony, every celebration, every service took place in the church because the Patriarch came here. So let's now step inside and see the beautiful icons that the church has. 110 icons dating back to 18th, 19th centuries, brought from everywhere in Egypt. And then before we get to the icons,
Wow.
let's take a look at the architectural style of the church.
Yes.
It is following the basilican style, with the existence of the apse in the back of the church And then there is a wooden screen wall separates the apse from the audience hall. Usually the Great Basilican church has 2 rows of columns, but here we have 3. So even in the architecture, the Egyptian architects created their own basilican style by adding 1 row of columns in the middle. And then take a look at the ceiling. This is very beautiful wooden ceiling, and there are so many things relating the shape to Noah's Ark. We're having the idea of painting wood, hating and painting wood all over the place. And then, same as every old architecture, there is symbolism everywhere. So let's start from this way. Up there, and you see the depiction of the Holy Family traveling along the Nile River. And then we have this map of Egypt that specifies exactly where they stopped, every stop and every modern name. The red color marks the entry, the flight to Egypt, and then the orange one is the return journey back to Jerusalem. And you can see the highlight of the 16 stops we were talking about, the way they came from up there, Jerusalem, passing by Bethlehem, and then coming to the land of Egypt, El Arish, the governorate today that lies north east of Egypt, sharing the borders with Palestine, and then coming all the way through the Delta, and then Babylon. This is where we are. There are so many stories about their existence here, and Joseph had to find a job in a fortress. They were hiding who they are, and then he wanted to bring some money for the family. So they tried to hide themselves in such a cave underneath the ground, and then he was working in a Babylon fortress and coming back every night. The cave now is below the church, and there are so many theories how long they were staying here in the cave. Some people say 2 weeks, others say 3 months. So we will get now inside the church and see the cave and the oldest structure of the church that is regarded as the oldest church in the whole place. The walls are amazing. The layout is very impressive. You can see it is very old way to be built. And then right by the entrance, this was a basin for the holy water. People can take water from him.
4th century, wow.
Yes, one of the oldest elements ever surviving in the church.
These bricks look new.
The bricks look new because they were restored, but we're talking about 7th century AD. And then the icon over there, Andy, it is depicting their arrival to Babylon, and they were met by an Egyptian woman that helped them to find a place to stay at, and helped Joseph the carpenter to find a job in a Babylon fortress. These are the
wow, look at that.
very old Bible.
What century are they from?
Oh, 17th, 18th, 19th centuries. Here is a well. Today, historians believe that this well was actually used by the Holy Family. Jesus drank from this well once, and this is now today is a very sacred well. Where they were staying. Of course, it was restored and added the columns later, but you can see some of the earliest remaining grounds. See if they stayed on the ground down there.
Oh, so they thought the Holy Family
Yes.
stayed down here. Okay. It's a very small space.
Yes. This was what was available back in time. What they were able to get to also hide themselves. We stand below the depiction of Saint George the Dragon Slayer in his church in Old Cairo, the Greek Orthodox Church. You can see the flag of Greece behind you over there and me. And what's the story of this saint and what exactly is relating him to a dragon? This man was a Greek man serving in a Roman army, and he was hiding his beliefs all the time. He was fighting in the name of Rome, killing Christians most of the time, but at some point he stopped. He decided to leave and dedicate his entire life to worship of Jesus. And then one day he left behind the legion and then was riding his horse in a wilderness, and he met a lady that was crying and running away. He stopped the lady and asked her what's going on. She was like, I was selected to be given as a sacrifice for a dragon that attacks my city all the time. And this time, they chosen me. And it happened that this lady was the princess of the whole castle or the whole city. And then he decided to slay the dragon for her. So he went, found the dragon, and then slayed the dragon for the princess. And then she gave him a medal for honor, and then he spent his entire life there in this city. Everybody there converted to be Christian, and then he was the main saint of the place. And since that time, the story of his sacrification, leaving behind the army, killing the dragon, fighting for the princess, is an example that every Christian loves to speak about. So let's head up and see the internal design of the church that happened to be built much in modern time. We're speaking about early 20th century. The internal design is beautiful, very colorful. Who is that? Bijou. If you take a look up there, you see the beautiful icon of the flight depicts the entry to Egypt.
Yes.
The Nile, the pyramids, Joseph and Mary carrying Jesus on a donkey entering the land of Egypt over there. So here we are, we're standing before the entrance of the Coptic Museum in Old Cairo. This museum was opened in 1910. When Egypt was preparing to open the Egyptian Museum in Tahrir Square to house the Egyptian artifacts, there was a lot of people interested in the idea of collecting the Coptic artifacts in one museum, and then they decided to dedicate this place to house the important Coptic collection, probably in the entire world, in one building. The facade of the museum is very interesting because, you know, Andy, this is inspiration from one of the Islamic mosques. We have a mosque that is built in 1300 AD, still in Cairo. We will see this mosque together next day, and the facade is identical. It's the same thing. Arches, the entrance, the semi-arches, and the decorations you see from the top to the base of the facade is there in Islamic mosque, with the exceptions or with the difference you see there, the cross that replaced every Islamic sign, and the inscriptions that is now showing the Coptic language and the Arabic language. Carvings and scenes comes from a place known as Ihnasia. It is an ancient Egyptian province, and yet early Christians went there and started their life there. Take a look at these crosses. This one. This is a cross, but it is a mix between the ankh, the ancient Egyptian sign of life, and then the cross carved within it. And now there are a very big group of Egyptologists says that the origin of the cross is the ancient Egyptian key of life, the ankh. And you see the evidence yourself. The early Christians, they were shaping the ankh and doing the cross within it.
What year is this from?
This is the 3rd century AD.
3rd century?
Yes.
1700
Yes,
years
yes.
old, wow.
They were hiding themselves in ancient Egyptian temples. And then we found entire temples converted into churches. Some tombs were also converted into churches, and the layout of the entire place was changed. Original coloring. Holy Christian box, and translations of the Bible. Some of them speaks about the return of Jesus, right? And the upper part of this page marks the journey back, and the 4 gospel writers. You see the 4 corners you see around here, because according to the box, they believe that Jesus is coming back with the 4 gospel writers. Adam and Eve, and there are 2 different depictions of them. One before they touch the tree, they were prohibited to touch, and the other one after. So here, look at their reactions on their faces and the way they are depicted, and then on the other side you see after they ate from the tree, the reactions changed, right? And they were trying to hide their bodies using the leaves of the tree. You see a snake here. That's their imagination of how Eve convinced him to eat from the tree, because the snake spoke the hair in the ears. Here, Andy, we have the collection of manuscripts that are dating to the 1st quarter of the 4th century AD. And you see they were all written in Coptic language. And the leather you see here, those were covers of early books, but the paper, most of it is missing. These are their names. And then very old copies of the Bible.
How old is that one?
Late 2nd century AD.
2nd century.
Yes.
Wow.
Those are objects from their daily life. Stuff they were using every day, the way they were carving on the wood.
Who sat in these chairs?
Who knows? The way they were depicting Jesus in different items. It varies according to the place and the location and all that.
That's not the Book of the Dead from the Mummy, is it?
No, that's a holder of a Bible.
That's a beautiful cover.
Yeah. We had such a complicated keys over there.
Those are the keys. Goodbye, Coptic Museum.
No, still in the museum.
Oh, we're still in the museum. Never mind.
This is the open area.
Ah,
the court.
beautiful.